To no surprise, we definitely called it first. Spelljammer, Adventures in Space on August 16th.
Welcome to every edition of the Tabletop RPG Talk Show. I'm Jon.
I'm Jesse.
Today we're going to loot the body and take a look at The Magician's Skull, issue number 7, put out by Goodman Games.
And for our random encounter, we're looking at the recent D&D Direct and all of the stuff that Wizards decided to drop on us at once.
So much. Just so much. But of course, we're going to start off with a morale check, which is where we look at the news of the day, not the D&D Direct, but other news. But before we even do that, Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great. The most recent Stranger Things trailer dropped.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the most revealing of everything that's potentially going to happen and going to happen in season 4.
Yep.
I've also started my rewatch of Stranger Things to get caught up for it.
Oh, cool.
And the biggest thing in the trailer was the big bad guy.
Yep.
Who is named Vecna. Which is kind of great, and they like hint at like an eye and a hand, and
oh yeah,
I'm, every season has had its like D&D equivalent bad guy, like the Mind Flayer and the Demogorgon and whatnot. I'm excited to see how they bring in or if they even bring in Lichdom.
Yeah.
How that ties into the D&D campaign that's happening in the show.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do like a D&D Stranger Things Vecna in like a new starter set.
Right.
I don't know. I'm really excited for the season. Like season 3, kind of like I watched the first couple episodes and I kind of slogged through the rest of it.
Yeah.
It was to me a little bit less exciting.
Right.
But this has got me absolutely pumped.
Oh, it's the delay of getting a new season of Stranger Things, I think, in the world of pop culture was the biggest pop cultural hit of the COVID of the pandemic, was having to delay the filming of that and to wait for that season to come out. So I'm super psyched. My theory with the Vecna is it's not actually Vecna, right?
Sure. From
Dungeons and Dragons, but it's what the kids are going to call whatever this creature happens to be. Just like they call the Demogorgon, and they call the Mind Flayer the Mind Flayer, but it's not a 1-for-1. I would expect this also to not be a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
Another cool theory, though, I heard was that this actually is all, it'll be revealed that all of this actually comes from the kids' imagination and comes from their table and from their game of D&D. And so, their characters might be fighting Vecna, and then there's this big bad behind the whole thing, and that it's actually their imaginations that are fueling the upside down.
So is that like a situation where at the very end they're going to pull back and they were playing the whole time?
Right. Yeah.
Or was it like what they're doing is influencing the real world?
Who knows?
That's interesting. I didn't think about
it's fun.
that.
I mean, it's fun to, this is we're not going to start a Stranger Things podcast.
Yeah.
Because there are those, but it's fun to, it's the water cooler moment. It's fun to speculate on. I love, and they're going to be dropping it in 2 parts, right?
Yes,
so there's going to be, one part at the beginning of the summer and then one part over the 4th. So it should be fun.
Well, Jon, how you doing?
Good. I since our last episode, I am happy to report I have found the hidden class in the Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland book. So after our interview with Brian, I went back and I spent a good portion of Easter weekend going through the book,
Sure.
and I was like, if you're going to find an Easter egg, why not find it on Easter, right? And so that was my goal.
So do we want to do like a spoiler? Hey, this is what it is, or do you want to leave that?
No, get the book and find it and have fun.
Sure.
No spoilers at this point. I don't want to be the first to spoil it. It's been kept a secret. Everybody's being cool about finding it and then being happy with themselves, but not ruining it for others. So we'll just keep it.
And there's going to be more secrets in the second printing.
Yep.
It's great. Brian's great.
Yep. Good stuff.
Okay, it's time for a morale check. In our morale checks, we look at news of the week and news of the times in all things tabletop and role-playing games. Firstly, we have Paizo finally getting into the 5th edition market. They are retooling and re-releasing their adventure path of Abomination Vaults, converted to 5th edition.
Sounds good to me. I don't know what took them so long.
It's been like 12 years or something. Like,
yeah.
I don't know why they haven't done it sooner.
Not 12 years, but it's been a
while.
almost a decade. We're getting there. Yeah, I mean, every single... I'm trying to think, like, whether it's Goodman Games or Troll Lord Games or, just about everybody, they've got their line, but then they also convert their stuff to 5th edition because why wouldn't you? It's not hard to do that, and you're gonna cast a wider net. You're gonna bring people to your company, and then you can always, hopefully make a couple converts.
Yeah.
But in the short term, you're at least selling a module or two.
It's a no-brainer, and a lot of people are a little upset towards Paizo that they're like selling out or something like that. But honestly, it's a good business decision.
Yeah.
And it's a good decision for the players.
Yeah. You want to keep the lights on, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to keep employing people, then make the game that people are playing. And in addition to that, bring them then to the, your world and to your game. And there will be people who will check out, what's the world called? Glorian?
Yeah.
Something like that. They'll check out a Glorian module and then they'll be like, I love this. And they'll get more stuff.
It's sort of similar to Starfinder or any pathway that, I really like this adventure.
Yeah.
Let me see more of what this creator has created.
Yeah.
And then you move into Pathfinder or Pathfinder 2nd edition or whatever. So playing Starfinder and reading through the Starfinder stuff really made me more interested in Pathfinder than I had been previously.
Sure.
So.
No, and any of the Paizo fans that are, saying, "Oh, this is a betrayal," or "What are you doing?" It's like they're going to be able to make more stuff you like because they're selling some 5e modules. Like this is a win-win, guys. Like this is okay. It's not a betrayal. They're not selling out. It's business, and it's good for business. So relax.
Win-win.
Yeah, good for you, Paizo. Like, yeah. In other news, Matt Colville, who runs MCDM Productions, he put out, by the way, the book Strongholds and Followers, which I think is one of
so good.
Absolutely, one of the best third-party 5e books that's available, and also the long-delayed Kingdoms and Warfare book, which should be getting into people's hands in a couple weeks or months here. But there's a Kickstarter now for a brand new book called Flea Mortals, which is a new 5e monster book. And what sets it apart from any other sort of monster manuals or bestiaries or bestiaries or whatever you call it, is that it has sort of a logical flow to how the villain or creature would attack. And so they have an opening move. They have sort of a what they call a crowd control move, like a middle attack, and then sort of an ultimate or finishing move. And so as the DM, most combat, is only going to last maybe 5 or 6 rounds.
Yep.
And so you can figure in the first or second round, you're going to do this move. And then in the third or fourth round, you're going to do this move. And then in the fifth or sixth round, you're going to do your ultimate move. And they're all really, supposed to be really interesting, like help sort of make the creatures more exciting, make the encounter more, more exciting. So it seems like a really good method for even going beyond the idea of like, legendary actions.
Yeah. Right? I was thinking of legendary actions. Like there is a good amount of openness with some more like boss-like enemies in 5th edition, but you're still sort of constrained to like a regular attack. I can only attack once.
Right.
The players get to attack 6 times before I get to attack again. And yeah, you can legendary action, but you only get so many of them, and they're kind of basic sometimes. Like you can have another breath weapon or something, and then you get like held by a very high level bard or something like that, and that doesn't feel good. And then you're just a pile of meat with HP. Like
right.
I like this idea a lot. Trying to make combat more exciting is always something exciting to me.
Yeah, and this is apparently all about the logical flow of like how the bad guy would, start off a combat, and then as they're learning what they would do next, and then kind of their ultimate final, move or whatever. So it looks interesting. The one thing that's holding me back is the price tag, though. It is it's $70 for the book. That's that's for the normal book. It's that's a lot to me to ask for. For,
I mean, they have a good
book.
track record.
Good, incredible. Like I said, Strongholds and Followers, the best. I mean,
someday we're going to have to talk about that book a little bit more in depth, but that's like the go-to city builder.
Yep. It's awesome. It's so good, especially if you have those high-level characters that you're kind of wondering, well, what am I going to do with them next? Or you want to have a way to, like we used it to finish off really one of our long-running campaigns, and it made for a very satisfying way to do it. But I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble with the price point. Yeah. So that's on me. But I at the same time though, if the reviews come out and it ends up being good, I may bite the bullet.
In other Kickstarter news, Free League has announced their Blade Runner RPG Kickstarter starting May 3rd.
Oh baby.
I am a huge Cyberpunk fan. Really into the high-tech, low-life stuff. Blade Runner's awesome. Cowboy Bebop, all that.
Yep.
And I have been waiting for this specifically because everything that we've played Free League using their Year Zero engine mechanics with their dice and their stress dice and whatnot has always been so fun and like easy on the new players, and it's just been fantastic. And to add on to that, the skin of Blade Runner and this idea of sort of like a cyberpunk noir setting, I'm backing it on day one. Yeah,
and I'm wondering, I mean, every single Year Zero engine game from Free League has had a little tweak to the rules, whether it's stripping something away or like in the Alien adding on the stress dice. Yeah. Like Tales from the Loop, it's really reduced down to its like, smallest form with just the regular D6 dice. So I wonder what the sort of novel mechanic is going to be for Blade Runner. If it's going to be just a reskin of Alien and have stress dice, or if it's going to have its own unique mechanic that makes it different and special. I don't know.
Hopefully there's a really awesome starter set with some really awesome dice.
Let's go. Let's go. And finally, Goodman Games has announced their number 7 in their Original Adventures Reincarnated series, and it's going to be The Dark Tower, which was originally published by Judges Guild in 1980. And Judges Guild, for those of you that don't know, was a third-party company in the 70s and into the 80s. Really one of the first third-party companies for D&D. And in some circles, they are credited with inventing what we would call the modern day module, the adventure. They called it, back in the 70s, they called them play aids.
Okay.
Right. So it would aid you in your ability to play. Right. So rather than, the original idea behind D&D was you were going to make up adventures with your friends. You would design your own dungeon and you would go off and do. And so these were play aids to help you. Really what they were making before they knew it was modules. And they had a special deal, Judges Guild, with TSR at the time. To produce these play aids, these modules, because TSR in the 70s, they didn't think there was any money in it.
Yeah. They didn't have open license or anything.
Yeah, but so it's fascinating to me because, I mean, obviously now with open licenses and things like that, there's lots of gaming companies that's what they do. They make modules.
Yeah, that's all they do.
That's all they do. They do that world building and stuff. So anyway, Dark Tower is one of the Judges Guild's modules from 1980, and it has the distinction of being considered one of the best early adventures for Dungeons and Dragons. It was ranked number 21 out of 30.
Okay.
In a Dungeon Magazine ranking of the top 30 adventures from 2004. It's the only non-TSR adventure to make the top 30.
Oh, interesting.
So it's again, in some circles it's considered the best non-official old school from the late 70s, early 80s adventure. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sorry for the history lesson, everybody. It's exciting to me. But so this number 7 of the Original Adventures Reincarnated line, instead of just one book or just 2 books, like the Temple of Elemental Evil, this one is going to be 3 books. And in fact, it's not just going to be 3 books, because there will be 3 books, and it'll have a book that will be the original reprinted. And collected and in a nice hardcover. And then there'll be a second hardcover that will be the 5th edition conversion of the book. And then there's going to be a third book that's going to be a 5th edition expansion of all new adventures in that, building off of essentially a sequel, right, to the Dark Tower. Then Goodman Games is going to drop a Dungeon Crawl Classics version of it too. So the reprint book 1 is going to be the same, but book 2 and 3 aren't going to be 5th edition. They're going to be Dungeon Crawl Classics. So that means, fellow listeners and lovers of tabletop role-playing games, that I'm broke already. That's two huge box
lot
sets.
Of books.
That's 2 big box sets. So, do I just get the Dungeon Crawl Classics one? Do I just get the 5th edition one? Do I get them both? What do you do here?
I think it is at least justified to get both.
Yeah.
Because having so wildly different, but sort of similar, but wildly different systems.
Yeah.
Being able to play this in 5th edition or Dungeon Crawl, because
Yep.
I'm sure different groups have, we only want to play Dungeon Crawl.
Yep.
Being able to play this old module in the game of their choice is really knocking it out of the park.
It's awesome. I mean, I was kind of wondering, where do they go after the Temple of Elemental Evil? And we're going to talk about that on the show, I think, coming up at some point. We both have it, and it's
fantastic.
Such a treasure trove. But I was like, where are they going to go next? Well, go big or go home. They're going big again. They're going bigger. So, wow. So, and it's number 7 in the series. We're also going to be looking today at issue 7 of The Magician's Skull. Just a weird numerical.
Yeah, we need one more
numerical thing. Yeah, we need one more 7. But anyway, nice job, Goodman Games. Great announcement, and excited for the Dark Tower. Not to be confused with the Dark Tower board game from Milton Bradley around the early 1980s too, which is now referred to as Return to Dark Tower.
Sure.
Which I'm not sure they may have actually spoken or worked some things
probably.
out. Because there are those two Dark Tower things, right? The module from 1980, the board game from 1981. Everything that's board game related is now called Return to Dark Tower.
Sure.
This module from Judges Guild, originally from Judges Guild, is Dark Tower, 2 different distinct IPs.
There's also The Dark Tower by Stephen
King, right? Another distinct IP. Yep. So if you're thinking about naming your punk band The Dark Tower, I don't know, guys. Name's probably taken. So let us know what you think. Are you excited about any of the tabletop RPG news that we shared with you on this episode?
Blade Runner.
Yeah. Original Adventures Reincarnated. Leave a comment below or send us a note at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. You should also check out everyeditionrpg.com. There you can find links to all of our socials, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also find some merch, our Patreon, all sorts of different ways to interact with us. So everything Every Edition is to be found on everyeditionrpg.com. Leave a comment, though, down below while you're watching this video. If you're on YouTube, let us know what you think.
It's time for a random encounter. On today's random encounter, we are looking at the recent D&D Direct news straight from WotC.
So much.
It is a ton of information. They dropped a ton of information before the summertime, trying to get everybody hyped about D&D and everything coming down the pipeline. And boy, is there a lot coming down the pipeline. So first off, we have the next D&D book. It's very much in the vein of the Yawning Portal book, Candlekeep book, the Ghost of Saltmarsh book, this sort of level 1 through 14 with a bunch of different adventures that are sort of setting agnostic so you can fit them into whatever campaign you're doing. It's called Journey Through the Radiant Citadel, and it actually takes place on the ethereal plane, which is really interesting to me because up until now there's only been sort of bits and pieces of what the ethereal plane is and what exists there and what it looks like, and you kind of as a DM just sort of have to wing it based on like whatever your players are doing or your previous knowledge of what it could be. So this sort of, a couple of adventures fleshing it out a little bit really excites me. And it's I don't know, it sort of gives you more space as a DM to move into. and actually utilize the ethereal plane.
Yeah, I think we'll end up talking about it more, but I think what they're really trying to do is differentiate the ethereal plane from the astral plane.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, just to be totally frank, I would often get them confused, right, in my own head, and forget about like the plane of shadow, right, which we talked about Stranger Things earlier, like that's supposed to be the upside down, right? So I do tend to get, some of those inner planes confused and mixed up and stuff. So, doing a little bit of a deeper dive and a little bit more differentiation makes a whole lot of sense. It also does feel like if they're doing the ethereal plane, if they're doing the astral plane, they're planting the seeds for Planescape.
Yes.
Like they are really, they're again, like the same way that we saw Spelljammer coming a mile away. I think it's pretty clear to say, and Planescape's going to be next, or at least in 2023 at some
somewhere
point.
in their pipeline, they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it comes with a ton of adventures, some new locations, some backgrounds, and there's going to be some player options and some DM options, just like a traditional book. I'm super excited about this book.
It looks great. I love portals.
Yes.
I like that's kind of what it's all about, right? It's different, different portals and then going to different a lot of the creators are sort of drawing from their own lived experience and their own cultures, right? And so there's a
large amount of people of color on the creator list specifically for that reason of bringing different cultures together. The front of the cover is like it looks like a bazaar where there's tons of different types of people there, and it's so like colorful and awesome, and like that was not my view of the ethereal plane. Right. So seeing that, gives me a little bit of excitement and being able to see what can exist there.
Well, it was clear like one of the adventures in the book is going to be, heavily influenced by the Mexican Day of the Dead, right? And trying to think of some of the other cultures that were represented and backgrounds and stuff. But the point is like it's fantasy doesn't just have to be European in background, right? And so this is kind of an exploration of that, and also fleshing out and using the ethereal plane. Yeah, cool.
I'm all for it.
Let's do it. That sounds great. Yeah. So they also dropped then. So Journey Through the Radiant Citadel is coming out June 21st. It's gonna kick us off in the summer. Later in the summer, then on August 1st, we're gonna get the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, which we talked about before. It's going to be a new starter set. It's going to have a focus on digital tools and onboarding new players.
Yeah. They just acquired D&D Beyond.
Yep, they just acquired D&D Beyond. So there you go. Like it's going to be sort of their flagship for getting people to do that, to start using D&D Beyond. And it was the previous leak, excuse me, said that it was going to be $50. Don't worry, it's going to be 20. So that's good news. It's going to be though a Target exclusive.
Yeah, that kind of concerns me as somebody who's worked at a hobby shop. The exclusivity is never a good thing unless it's in favor of the hobby shop and not the big box store.
Right.
Like the alternate covers that you can get for most D&D books are hobby store exclusive. You can't get those at Barnes & Noble or Target or anything like that. So that drives business to small businesses, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But a Target exclusive, I don't know how I feel about that. That's not really like sort of in the community. It'll sure reach a different audience, which I can appreciate.
Sure.
But I'm sure at some point it'll make its way into other shops. It's just a matter of time, most likely.
Well, it's a pain point for other hobbies. Like I'm thinking specifically of toys.
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically of like Masters of the Universe toys. There have been a bunch of exclusives that have been Walmart exclusive, Target exclusive, and they end up being harder to get. And then the secondary market, the markup on them and scalpers and stuff, like it's not fun. I don't think this is going to be in danger of something that's going to get scalped.
I hope not.
They'll print so many of them, and the price point is so so reasonable. I think it's going to be fine. One last thing to note, though, about the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, if you take a hard look at the cover, if you can like zoom in on the cover, there are two characters from the 1980s D&D cartoon on there. So there's Hank, who was the ranger with the energy bow,
Yep.
and there's Diana, the acrobat with the javelin staff. I'm not making that up. Look at the image. You can see there they are. So I'm kind of hoping the pre-generated characters that come with it are the characters from the cartoon.
That'd be fantastic.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be reason enough to get me to, like, I'd be all over.
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and excited. Like, I'd be like, I'm in Target. Where are my pre-gens? You know. But they did it once before. They released the characters in the original printing of the D&D cartoon DVD box set. It had a little booklet. Actually, it was a hardcover booklet that had stats for third edition.
Sure.
With the characters from the cartoon. So I'd love it if they did that again. Magic had done a set.
Well, it was a secret lair set. That was like a special drop that was Wizard of the Coast website only. But it was cards that existed in Magic with alternate art that were done like animation cells.
Yeah.
That had all the D&D characters on it, and there was a Dungeon Master one.
Yeah.
Like it was really.
I think there was
awesome.
one with Venger, the bad guy,
yeah.
and there was a couple other of the kids.
Clearly, they know that people are excited about the old cartoons.
That's cool. Yeah.
Well, next up we have to no surprise, we definitely called it first. Spelljammer, Adventures in Space on August 16th is going to be a slipcase box set of 3 different books, and I cannot wait.
Me neither. They said in the announcement, they were like, we wanted to spark joy. And I was like, you did it, guys.
Yeah,
like,
this is it.
It's better than just a book. It's like 3 books. That's great. It's a slipcase. It's a monster manual. It's a player guide. It's an adventure.
Like DM screen, alternate covers,
a map. Like, yeah. So I did have a big smile on my face. I was like, wow. I think I texted.
Yeah.
Texted a bunch of folks. I was like, oh my gosh, they really like. It was like being a kid on Christmas. It was exciting. To get that announcement. I think they're going to do this right.
I will say the size of the books that will be there and the price point of the slipcases they're different. I'm not like concerned.
Yeah.
It's $70 for the 3 books. Mm-hmm. You can only buy them as a 3-book set.
Right.
So it's going to have like player stuff, monster manual stuff, DM stuff, that sort of separation. But the books themselves are like 64 pages each. So there's not much content in those books, but together as a set, it's still not as much as a regular book, but it's $70. You get a DM screen and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. I think it's okay.
Yeah.
And I hope that eventually they break it up, or at least see that people are okay with smaller books for a cheaper price.
Yeah, we'll see. I think this is a test, right? And I think they are. I think Wizards is thinking, is this how we're going to do settings moving forward?
Yeah.
One of the things that they did with acquiring D&D Beyond as part of the Spelljammer announcement, they released 10 free monsters, which they called a monsters compendium, just like from second edition Dungeons and Dragons. And so you get a little teaser with 10 monsters. I mean, who's not going to do that for free?
And they're all from the Spelljammer.
And they're all coming right there. It's a preview, right, of what. But they're 10 full monsters. Like you don't have to buy the book. You can get those monsters, right now for free. But if I take a step back and I think about how the Monsters Compendium was used in second edition, I think about the settings that had Monsters Compendiums. It's Dark Sun. It's Planescape. It's Dragonlance. They all had Monsters Compendium releases, and especially with Planescape and with Dark Sun, they actually had compiled Monster Compendium books.
Oh, sure.
So with those two sort of, we're all sort of waiting for those to be coming in the next year or two, right? I can imagine a slipcase for Dark Sun, right? I can imagine a slipcase for Planescape following the same model here. I admit I lost a little bit of enthusiasm when I heard they were each going to be 64 pages, because if you total that up, it's actually less than a normal size hardcover, 5th edition book. So they found a way to charge you 20 more bucks and have 20 fewer pages.
Hopefully that means they've trimmed a little bit of the fat, because there sometimes is a little bit of fluff.
Yeah.
But this could be a good like sort of cookie cutter mold for the various ancillary sort of worlds.
Yeah. I'm also thinking too, this might be how we get Greyhawk.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I keep thinking about my spoiler alert for my brain. I am absolutely convinced that the 50th anniversary is going to have some kind of release of Greyhawk for the latest edition of Dungeons and Dragons, a little bit more Greyhawk support, so you can play in the original world, connecting the new game to the past. There's already some Greyhawk support that's out there, but they could do a Greyhawk player's guide, monster manual, and adventure in a slipcase just like this. They could even go back and do a better job with Ravenloft.
Revisit some older.
Yeah. But I do think Dark Sun and Planescapes, it seems like a slam dunk. If this sells at the $70 price point, I bet you we're going to get those two in the same format.
I really like this format. I really like what they're doing with Spelljammer, even though I had quite literally last week just gotten done explaining Spelljammer to a couple of newer D&D players.
Like the physics?
Like the physics and the flagellum and all that stuff.
Phlogiston.
The phlogiston, yeah. And they were like looking at me with like a dead stare, like, I have no idea what you're talking. This is going to be so much easier.
Yeah.
There's no crystal spheres.
No crystal spheres.
And
no phlogiston.
No phlogiston. You could you treat it just like regular space, like fine, whatever, that's fine.
Yep.
Easy peasy. Let's just get into the game.
Yeah, and so what's going to separate the galaxies then, the planets and the wild space, is going to be the astral sea or the astral plane. I mean, it's the same word for the same thing. And so again, like we said at the top of this segment, they're really starting to say, like, this is the ethereal plane, this is the astral plane. You don't need to get them confused anymore. This is this and that is that, and fleshing them out. So that does mean if it's the astral sea, you could take a Spelljammer ship and go through the astral sea and reach, the nine hells.
Yep. It seems like there are physical places that you can reach without the aid of planar magic.
Yeah. So there's mixed results. I'm on the Facebook group, the Sages of Spelljammer, which is a great, really fun Facebook group. But there's definitely mixed reactions to them getting rid of the crystal spheres and the phlogiston. People saying, like, is it even Spelljammer if you don't have those things? Fair enough, right? It was part of the original thing. I do think though that was always a hurdle. For people getting into it. Was the what do you want to call it? Grubbian physics. Jeff Grubb was the creator. I think it's referred to as Grubbian physics. The idea of the crystal spheres and the phlogiston. Jeff Grubb not involved in the 5th edition. That also is as a pain point for some people in the community, saying, like, why didn't you have the original designer back on board? He's still involved in the gaming world. I think it's going to be interesting. Like, I'm still a little less excited than the original announcement, but still pretty excited.
I'm always for D&D and space related things, and this just seems like a natural progression of Wizards of the Coast and 5th edition. So I'm more variety for more players, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Oh, and to cap it off, remember they showed the WizKids. Spelljammer figures and stuff. So there's going to be a brick of random figures, and then there's also going to be ship scale sets of the different Spelljammer ships.
Yes, having a spaceship or a Spelljammer for your party, and like going through like on an actual map is going to be super fun. Especially when you've got like a big a spider asteroid creature and attacking the ship, and they're having ship combat and all that. It's going to be really fun.
They're also, in addition to the Monstrous Compendium that's out now on D&D Beyond, they're also going to, right before the release of Spelljammer on August 16th, They're going to have Spelljammer Academy coming out in July, and that's going to be an introductory adventure and primer to Spelljammer that's going to be free.
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to play Spelljammer without buying the box set, and you'll be able to play for a month before it's even released with the monsters, with the adventure, with the primer that are going to be out. So they are doing a good job driving people to D&D Beyond. It brought me to D&D Beyond for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm clearly an analog guy. So it's like, I want to check out the Monsters Compendium.
Sure.
I want to see the preview of the 10 monsters. So there you go.
Spelljammer's coming.
Spelljammer's coming. All right, so we're going to rapid fire some other announcements from the D&D Direct that are sort of ancillary to the tabletop role-playing game world. So there was a preview of Baldur's Gate 3. They announced that that's coming out 2023.
So this has been in early access for like a year and a half. It has felt like it was released. I thought that it was already released. And then they said, hey, it's releasing next year. And I was like, oh, okay. It's a video game that was created with 5th edition in mind alongside it.
Yep.
Like you're basically playing a video game version of 5th edition.
Yep.
It looks super good. I can't wait. The new real play Legends of the Multiverse is going to start. We've talked about real play in the past. If real play is your jam, they're going to have a new official Wizard of the Coast real play starting.
Yeah, and it's a Spelljammer real play. The theme song is awesome. It reminds me of like cartoon theme songs from the 80s.
Sure.
So I'll probably check it out. Certainly to get a feel for another real play, and it's always good to like have one to be able to jump in at the beginning and not feel like you're behind.
Yeah.
So off we go. Next up, they also announced Wizards announced in July they're going to have 2 what they're calling campaign cases. One that's terrain and one that's creatures. These are basically like puzzle piece, maps, and play on their old tile.
Yeah, they've got a couple tile sets out
Tile
now.
sets. So this is a puzzle piece tile set that's going to fit in a little suitcase thing, and then tokens. That's what the creature things are. And they made a big deal about monster clings. I think it's just what do they call it? Color forms.
Yeah,
like from the 80s. This was not a big exciting announcement.
Yeah, it's great to have more terrain and things like that. More modular pieces are always good.
It tells me they sold out of tiles, and then so they decided to update. That's it.
WizKids also announced there's a new game called D&D Onslaught.
Yeah.
That is their answer to a tactical strategy game like Warhammer.
Look out, 40K.
Or 40K. Yeah. I don't know how exactly it's going to go. I'm not personally a minis kind of guy.
Yeah.
But, WizKids is great. They make great minis. And this one's going to be focused around the Harpers and the Zentarum.
That's cool.
Which are 2 factions that are super prevalent in a lot of the new 5th edition books.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that fleshed out.
Yeah, and I can, in the 90s when I was playing lots of 2nd edition, I can remember being excited about joining the Harpers and fighting the Zentarum. And so those ring bells of nostalgia for me that like, that might bring me to a tactical game, which is not normally my jam. So they're, again, doing a good job with the nostalgia and bringing the D&D worlds to life, I think, with different products.
Yeah.
Lastly, a new movie, D&D Honor Among Thieves. This is
finally happening.
It's finally happening. A reboot.
Yeah, another movie
of the series. This one is going to be Chris Pine versus Hugh Grant. Chris Pine's the good guy. Hugh Grant's the bad guy.
I like the actors.
Yeah.
There's a couple other actors on the roster that seem pretty great. Michelle Rodriguez among them.
Yep.
I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I just hope that they, for years there's been like the if they do a D&D movie, they need to have this happen, and it's where one of the party members dies, their character dies, and then a new character comes in played by the same actor, and they're like, "Oh, that was my brother Jim. I'm Tim." Like,
that's the thing. Like, do you go camp?
Yeah.
Do you go full camp, or do you play it serious?
Super serious. Yeah.
I think that's maybe why, like the Lord of the Rings definitely went for serious.
Yeah.
And I think the Hobbit movies went for a little more camp, and that either worked or didn't work.
Depending on your taste.
Yeah, depending on your taste, right? So yeah, I don't know what this could be a hot piece of garbage.
Yeah, I hope that they take a page from the book of Guardians of the Galaxy, because D&D is definitely that sort of fun of a group. You want your group to be that fun.
Yeah.
And there could be some cool references and things in there.
Good call. If they have it more like Guardians of the Galaxy, that'd be a good template for them to use. Man, the D&D movies from the early 2000s just suck. I mean, they're awful. They're not even fun in like a Mystery Science 3000.
Yeah. And the effects are really bad.
Yeah, so it's just so I still have that, Yeah. And I think a lot of people do. So there's.
I mean, for me, most recently the Warcraft movie. I've been waiting for that for like 15 years.
Yeah.
And that was hot garbage.
Okay.
And it was it was definitely serious, and the effects were pretty bad. It was a big disappointment. So I'm hoping that this is not a disappointment.
Here we go.
But hopes are, at least until we see more. It was like a 30-second teaser or whatever, just like basically showing the title.
Yeah.
So we didn't get very much at all.
No.
So we'll see. No. And lastly, Dragonlance was teased for late 22. Speaking about different types of settings and different types of games being brought to 5th edition, Dragonlance we've sort of dipped our toes into with Fizbin's Dragon Book last year.
Yep.
This has some people, as you would expect, in a kerfuffle. The Kender have been fleshed out a little bit and changed from the original Unearthed Arcana release. They've updated that based on player feedback, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's very good.
This has no involvement from the original creators, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
Right.
Which, again, just like
Jeff Grubb and Spelljammer.
Yeah, just like Spelljammer.
Yeah.
It's a pain point, but I mean, I'm excited for Dragonlance. I really like the Dragonlance books and the world.
It was a surprise. Like when I after the announcement, I just assumed, I was like, the original creators must be involved because they've got a new book coming out. I know they've had their differences with Wizards, but they figured that out to get the new book out. And I thought, they must be involved. They're not involved in the 5th edition book. A little surprising.
Yeah.
But like you said, they're fixing some things. They did an original Unearthed Arcana that had the Kender as more magical beings.
Yeah.
That their sort of penchant for borrowing things, acquiring things. That it had more to do with like magical luck, that they just happened to have the right thing. But that's not what the Kender are.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Kender are sort of like halfling gnomish people,
right?
That are native to Dragonlance, that don't have their culture doesn't have the thought or the knowledge of possessions.
Yeah, they don't have the same idea about ownership.
Yeah. So they'll just reach up on a table and take something because it strikes their fancy right there, but they don't mean to like steal it.
Right.
If somebody takes it back, they're not going to be offended or anything like that.
So they're calling it now. So rather than having it be a magic power that like they just happen to have the right thing at the right time, which makes no sense and doesn't fit in with the character. That was originally called like Kender Aces or something that. Like it was an ace in the hole that you always had the thing. They got rid of that, which is great. They're now going to do what they're calling Kender Curiosity, which has a couple options for different sort of skill enhancements. And one of the skill enhancements that you could pick is Sleight of Hand.
Sure.
So that is the more traditional Kender. It's a simple fix. I think I'm glad that they're actually using the Unearthed Arcana feedback, because the way they talked about it, they said like, we got some feedback and it was mixed.
It wasn't mixed.
You got some feedback and it was negative. Like that's just you didn't capture that particular race and world.
Yeah.
And good, you fixed it. Like so there is a new Unearthed Arcana that's a revised version of the Heroes of Krynn. You can still get the old one too. So if you want to see what they did to the Kender, you can take a look side by side and see how they made it a little bit more true to life. And there's a video where they actually they talk about the drop of this Unearthed Arcana revision and why they did the changes they did. So.
And I think this goes a long way, at least for me. If a company puts out like a survey or they do this sort of Unearthed Arcana play testing, you kind of always feel in the back of your head, like, are they really reading what I'm putting forward?
Yeah.
And I think this does go to show that to some extent they are, and they do care about our opinions as players.
They tried something and they heard the feedback and they're fixing it. That's good. You want to feel like you're heard.
Yeah, exactly. So let us know what you think about the D&D Direct, and drop a comment on what you're most excited for, or what your theories are for the future of D&D Direct. I'm kind of sort of on the fence about this dropping a bunch of information all at once, because I'm someone who can't wait.
Yeah,
I want things a little bit quicker than that. But I also like all this excitement all at once. So, and I think there's some awesome things that could come in the future. So drop a comment down below. Drop us a line at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com, and check out all of our socials at everyeditionrpg.com.
All right, it's time to loot the body. Today's Loot the Body, we are taking a look at Tales from the Magician's Skull, issue number 7 from Goodman Games. This is my first, deep read of Tales from the Magician's Skull. I backed this on Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter was a subscription for the next, I believe, 4 issues. And if you backed them, you got an exclusive issue that was only available to Kickstarter supporters, Kickstarter backers. So the first issue of this Kickstarted subscription has come in, issue 7. Jesse and I both had a chance to take a look at it and peruse it. It's great.
So, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Tales from the Magician's Skull, it is an anthology magazine.
Yeah.
It puts together a bunch of fantasy-related short stories into one easy-to-read magazine.
Yeah, and because it's Goodman Games, one of the cool things about this is there are stats for a monster from each of the short stories that are in the back for the Dungeon Crawl Classics game. So it functions as an expansion or a supplement for the DCC role-playing game. So it's great short stories by lots of different authors. Some that maybe you've heard of, and others that are going to be new to you, and you're going to get some exposure to some new folk. I read the short story, in preparation for this. I read "Interred with the Worm," which was awesome.
Yeah,
it was written by Scott J. Kurterer.
Okay,
probably butchering the last name. Sorry about that. Scott, if I ever see you, you can let me know how to correctly pronounce your name. But the story was "Interred with the Worm." It was great. It was about a burglar, a guy who was going into a crypt or a sarcophagus deep underground to steal a particular necklace that would imbue the wearer with invulnerability.
Ooh.
And he was stealing it for a high up noble person. So that's how the story starts. Obviously, there's going to be an encounter with a worm.
Sure.
I'm going to stop there in terms of not spoiling too much. I'm really just setting it up for you. But needless to say, the encounter with the worm is the core of the adventure, going deep underground. And it's really cool. And the this particular issue then has the stats for the great white worm in the back.
Did you get a feel for what time period or what sort of setting this was in?
No, it just felt like any kind of dungeon
sort of generic fantasy.
Dungeon dive generic fantasy world would work. Any place where you would have somebody grave robbing for a magic item, and going deep underground and encountering a giant worm, you're good to go.
I think this. I'm not sure exactly about yours because I only read mine. I read Beneath the Scarlet Moon.
Okay.
It definitely set it up in a way where you as a DM could take what world building has been had of this particular ruins, this set of ruins, and build upon it and make an encounter out of it or make a one-shot out of it, which I thought was really neat.
Cool.
But this one was very clearly the same sort of like generic fantasy setting.
Yeah.
So this was it followed a sort of sand warrior. His name was Auric, and there wasn't very much dialogue in it. There was a lot of exposition and things like that. But he was searching the deserts for his son, and triggered a magical trap. He was like chasing some mages and a witch's coven who had stolen his son. He triggers a magical trap, gets bitten by this like poisonous centipede, and is dying. And I won't reveal what happens for the rest of it.
Yeah.
But he survives to some extent, and there's a fight. The fight is against a manticore, which was described much bigger than I would have thought a manticore in traditional fantasy would be, which I thought was really cool. But this short stories, this is by the author James Eng, by the way.
Okay.
This story in the back of the book has like 6 or 7 different monsters.
Oh, wow.
There are a lot.
Great.
And like one of the, so there's another character that's a sort of neutral party, and that character also has a stat block in case you want to use them too.
Oh, cool.
But the creepiest thing to me was later on in the story, he drops into the set of ruins where he's trying to find these bad guys, and the author describes this huge centipede that's like as big as a car, that sort of sizing, but for a face it has an infant's face.
Oh.
And I actually shook. I was like, oh my god, that has a stat block too.
Okay.
Which I thought was really neat. I really enjoy anthology books.
Yeah.
I've submitted some amount of prose for my homebrew World of Illyria, for various anthology books. World Anvil, the website that I use for world building, has partnered with various anthology fantasy books to sort of have contests to be in it.
Great.
Fantasy and sci-fi and horror anthologies are always super good to expose you to all sorts of authors and creative minds.
Feed the creative juices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially if you can pick up this and take from it, like, what if I wanted, a ruined place in the deserts, and I wanted these bad guys to be in it? Well, there's the skeleton for it right there.
Yeah. Price point on this is what, $15?
Yeah, $14.99.
$14.99,
which I think is like it's a traditional magazine size, so regular paper size. So if you're a collector of magazines, it fits with everything else, like Dragon magazine and whatnot. And the price point is the same for traditional magazines currently.
Yeah.
Except you don't get all the dumb advertisements. You get a ton of awesome fantasy related writing, and you get some monsters to use in your campaigns, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, no wasted space on ads here. This is like pretty much all short stories. There's like one Goodman Game ads in the front cover and like one in the back.
And there's like, at least for the Beneath the Scarlet Moon, there was a rudimentary map of like, this is Oric's journey and this is the runes. And each one has like at the beginning a sort of 1-page art for it too, which I think is really awesome. And it's got that same sort of dungeon crawl, old school look to it, which I really like.
And the whole, just taking a step back, like the whole thesis of Goodman Games is a celebration of Appendix N from the original Dungeon Master's Guide, which is, all the works of fiction that really helped fuel the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. And so this is a celebration of those works and that type of fantasy literature, as much as it is new, something new for people in 2022. So highly recommended by us. It's a great idea to check this out and read some of these awesome short stories, and then also go back and check out some of the authors that are a part of Appendix N and know your history. Like I recently read for the first time, I'll be honest, Jack Vance and Dying Earth.
Sure.
And it was amazing because it was Dungeons and Dragons magic. Yeah. Like it knocked my socks
Spell
off.
slots and all
that. Yeah. No, so spell slots in your head, right? Like, it took me back to thinking about, playing second edition D&D in the 90s. And I'd never read, most of the time when you read a fantasy book, there's magic in it, but it's not like one for one like your tabletop experience.
Yeah.
And so this kind of similar, I guess, like how Baldur's Gate 3 is built on. This was like, oh, this is what Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax were literally thinking of when they were putting together their magic system.
Yeah.
And so
take that.
Baldur's Gate 3 is built on 5e, and like OD&D and first edition and second edition D&D are built on Jack Vance.
Yeah.
And so it was really just cool. So I've just started getting more into, thanks to Goodman Games, getting more into reading Appendix N stuff and more short stories.
Well, thanks for watching Every Edition, your tabletop RPG talk show. I'm Jesse.
I'm John.
And let us know, again, what you think about the D&D Direct. There was so much news. We tried to cover most of it. I'm sure we glossed over some stuff. Let us know what you're interested in. And don't forget to check out our socials at everyeditionrpg.com. And, thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.